Are we a nation of begrudgers of the English? We begrudge the English. Irish Independent Columnist Bill Linnane has been doing some soul searching on this very topic, and he joins us now. Bill, can I say first of all, I'm a mad fan of your column. I like them greatly, all of them, and this was no different. Explain why this came about, that you started to think about this, please.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I suppose it was a long period of reflection, possibly due to being isolated during the pandemic and going quietly mad. I suppose being separated out from society for a while gave me time to reflect on things. It was a couple of years ago during the Six Nations. I would watch it with my kids usually, and whatever team I'd be cheering for, obviously I'd be cheering for Ireland. They would cheer the opposition. They wouldn't care who it was. It wasn't about countries. It was about annoying their dad and trying to drive me to have a massive heart attack. So I'd be cheering
like
on Ireland.
lovely children. You've done a fabulous job.
Oh, they're wonderful. I love them very much. But so I was cheering on Ireland. We were playing England, and my kids were like, who are we playing? Who's that? And I said, that's England. And they started shouting, "Come on, England! Come on, England!"
And were you triggered?
And I was triggered. Yeah, that was the thing. I stopped them and I said, no, we don't do that. We don't. And then I launched into, probably during the ad break at halftime, I launched into, several hundred years of Irish history and all the various wrongdoings and atrocities. And I probably drew in some local stuff from here in East Cork, the Clonmulk massacre and everying else. And
sorry, don't mean to laugh,
concluded with and that children
you hit them between the eyes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to whatever, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old here about, the famine and the corn laws and everything else. So I had to step back from it. And I suppose with social media, you see it an awful lot as well. You see an awful lot of, I understand the sensitivity, but maybe we're a little bit too sensitive, and maybe at some point we need to kind of start letting go.
Yes, and you wrote then, you thought, well, what have the English, it's a bit like, what have the Romans done for us? What have the English actually done to us, to you personally?
Yeah.
And the answer was nothing, and you thought, I need to let go of this antipathy.
Yeah, completely, because, I suppose a certain amount of it is inherited, and my dad would have been born in the 1930s, so when he was growing up, a lot of this stuff was very raw and very real. There were only a couple of generations from the famine, so all of these stories were passed down, and it was part of their legacy. And, growing up in the aftermath of the Civil War and the War of Independence, there was a lot of really raw feeling there. But, even my dad worked and lived in the UK, and, he had great time for English people, but he still, I think, would have had that.
Yeah, and that latent...
the English with a capital T, capital E, the English, that's a big, blob.
That latent...
That we kind of,
anti-English sentiment, I think it is there. I think we do prefer to beat the English to the French, say, or I think if we win on Saturday, when we win on Saturday, hopefully, it's better that we're winning by beating the English than by beating the Scottish or a different team, or the Italians. That would be hardly noticeable. But the flip side of it is because Shane and I were discussing this off the back of your column at the start of the show, and I kind of like kicking the English, not in a really pointed or heartfelt way, but the old rivalry is kind of fun. It's a bit like, I was saying, a bit like a derby. It's a bit like Man U versus Man City, or Liverpool versus Everton, or possibly, now that I think about it closely, maybe more like Celtic and Rangers. But it kind of adds a spice that's vaguely enjoyable for sport. Is that not okay?
It does, yeah, completely. And I totally understand that, but I think we're talking about probably a kind of a spectrum from the friendly rivalry and bit of banter to a fairly deep-seated animosity, that it doesn't take much to kind of stir it up and to scratch the surface of that.
And you think, it's a spectrum. You think it goes from someone like me who doesn't actually hate the English at all, but enjoys handing them their ass on a plate in the Aviva.
Yeah, and but there's also that kind of schadenfreude of, the joy of watching them fail, that it doesn't matter, who wins as long as the English get bait. There's that kind of pleasure as well.
I'm chuckling even at the thought of it.
Yeah, and Mac Hansen, when he was talking, Mac Hansen, grew up in Australia. His mum's from just down the road here in Castlemartyr, but he grew up in Australia, and he was talking about it, and he said, there's a deep-seated hatred there, and he said, he qualified it by saying, it's years ago, and, but obviously the team themselves kind of use it to fuel themselves.
I
And that's
do
fine,
think
that's
partly,
sport psychology, but it does me no benefit,
I do think,
carrying
I know,
this weight of history.
But they partly did bring it on themselves by like invading loads of countries and being a colonizer and kind of just being annoying and stuff. Is that not fair?
Yeah, there is, but I mean, what relevance does that have to?
No, I know.
And I mean, that's what empires did. Unfortunately, that's the ugliness of history, as well. But there was atrocities carried out. But I suppose the question is, what does forgiveness look like? Do we need to forgive?
Not
I mean, I've been married for 20 years, so I know that part of forgiveness is you don't keep bringing it up, whatever the transgression was, every day for the rest of your life.
All right.
And I think even, they're at the point where even if they try to give us an award, if it's a BAFTA or if it's a Brit Music Award, we bristle.
No, you're making excellent points, and I do appreciate it. And thank you, because it's a very interesting topic, particularly ahead of this weekend, Paddy's Day and the match. Look, thank you very much for speaking to us. That is Bill Linnane there, Irish Independent columnist. Let us know what you think.